In this video, you'll learn how to create a stylish navigation menu bar item from scratch. We'll start by creating HTML structure, then work our way to the design. We'll talk about design decisions, and we will refine everything we create step by step until we end up with something that looks like this. We'll focus on CSS, of course, work with flexbox, HSL color syntax, and more. Let's dive in. Alright, we will start from the scratch, and first thing when you're approaching something like this, when you're starting a new project, I would recommend you start with HTML. So you create the HTML structure and then you introduce CSS to it and you start styling it. And for this particular guide, we'll just create a simple navigation bar. I will create HTML now, and I will use actually Emmet to quickly generate all the HTML that I need. If you're not familiar with Emmet and how Emmet works, I will probably create a guide on how to use it soon, so subscribe to it, make sure you don't miss it. In short, you just create the structure and expand it. And CodePen has a fantastic integration with Emmet because it actually shows you exactly what the generated code will look like. I will start with the header element, and we're going to use some kind of a BEM methodology naming structure here. So we're going to have a header component, and within header component, we're going to have the various elements, which will have a class header. And within header component, we will have a logo and a navigation bar. Logo is actually going to be h1 tag with the class header logo, and you can see exactly the preview of what the generated code will look like because CodePen understands that I'm creating Emmet structure here. So header logo, and within the logo, we will have link and we will have an image. Right, and we will wrap all of this into parentheses because next to our h1, we actually want to have a nav element. And this is again going to have a class header nav, and within nav we will have unordered list again with the class header ul, and within that we'll have an li item, or rather 4 li items, and each of those li items will have an anchor link with the class header, because this is our component a. All right, we will start from there. I will expand this now, and all the code is immediately generated. I will quickly populate links now, so we have something for our demo. I will not type this manually, so you don't have to watch me just type everything manually. Here are my links. We're going to have newsletter, YouTube, Twitter, and sticker. These are all links to my work, so please check them out. And of course, we actually want to have an actual logo here. Link should be CSS Weekly. And for the logo, we will actually use CodePen assets to add an image here. And you can find CodePen assets here. I will just copy this CSS Weekly logo as an image. I will close this and I will paste it exactly in a place where the image is. Let's see if it works. It's actually working, but the logo is white, as you can see, because we're going to have actually some kind of stylish background, but more on that in just a bit. And I'll just add an alt attribute here, CSS Weekly logo. There we go. And I think that's pretty much it for our HTML. We have a header element with the h1, which is going to be our logo, and with the navigation that contains an unordered list with list items, or rather with 4 list items, and each of those list items contains an anchor link. In any case, let me just fold this code right here so you can see exactly how this looks. Whenever you're creating a component or entire website, start with the HTML because this will allow you to actually create something that's sensible semantically, and then later on when you style it, if you need to change something, tweak something, or add something to your HTML, you can always do that. And now let's switch to our CSS. And here, let's start with adding a beautiful background to our body. And if you want to find a beautiful background, there is a number of fantastic background collections on the web, and the one that I particularly like and often use is hypercolor.dev. And these are actually gradients for Tailwind CSS, but I think they're really wonderfully done, and you don't have to copy the Tailwind code, you can actually copy the pure CSS code, which is exactly what we're going to do here. Let me zoom this in a bit. And let's find a nice background to use for our project here, for our demo here, and like this picture one. And I'm just going to tweak it a little bit and set the background direction to bottom right. Okay, I think this looks pretty much okay. I'll copy the code here, and I will apply that gradient to my entire body. So let's set the body tag, and let's set the background. This is going to be a background image. And here it is. This is not exactly what we want, and the problem is our body is not stretching the entirety of the page, so our gradient is actually repeated. And to fix that, we'll actually set the minimum block size to 100 viewport block. And this is actually a logical equivalent of height property. And if you don't know how logical properties work, check out my video on CSS logical properties. There I explain exactly why I should use this instead of height and what exactly is viewport block unit and how it's different from viewport height. In any case, now we have our background stretching entirety of our page exactly as we want. Let me format this code right now. Okay, this looks much nicer now, but I don't actually want to use RGB color format here. I actually want to use HSL. And I find HSL color format to be much more intuitive and much more easier to work with. And this is going to be especially important here because we will actually want to use colors that work together well. And it's really easy to do that using the HSL. If you want to learn more, check out my video in HSL color format. What we can do here is we can convert those RGB colors to HSL. And for that, I'm going to use the browser developer tools. So I have this body tag selected, and as you can see, here is my background image specified as hex colors. But if I hold down the shift key and click on the color, I'm going to be able to select exactly the syntax that I want. And I actually want HSL. Same thing for my second color, and exactly the same for my third color, HSL. If you ever need to convert colors to a different format, you can do that in browser developer tools in Chrome DevTools with the click of a button, as you can see right now. So I'm going to copy this code now, and I will replace my linear gradient with my HSL format values. And again, I will format this code on CodePen, and I will just get rid of those percentages because I don't think we really need to go that deep. And now when working with colors, we'll actually use colors we already have on the page, and we will just tweak them using the HSL format. All right, we will do a couple of more things on our body tag. We'll set font family to sans serif. I will set font size to 1.4 rem unit. I'll set line height to 1.5. And I'll set body text color to almost white, but I will give it just a little bit of this orange tint that we have here, which is our third color in the gradient, this one. So I will set color to this, but I will tweak the lightness of this particular color to 90%. Because this value is hue, this value is saturation, and this is lightness. And you can see immediately that we got an almost white color here on the bullet points of our unordered list. And I see a problem in my code here. Accidentally, I've used font style instead of font size. So let's change this. All right, and now our fonts are a little bit bigger. That's fine. All right, this should be a good enough starting point. And now the next thing that I want to do is I actually want to create some kind of a container for our header element. And as you remember, we have a header class for our header element. So I'll just use that. And we'll set the background color. Let me close developer tools for now. And we will just use one of the colors we already used. And this time I'm going to pick this one, and I want to make it very dark, almost blackish. So let's tweak the lightness for this color. We'll set lightness to 5%, and we'll actually set opacity to 50%. Let's see how this looks. Okay, now our gradient is coming true because this is semi-transparent color, and it's still in sync with our background because we're using the same hue as we're using for our background, this one. All right, I also want to give a little bit of breathing room to my elements here, so I'll set padding, maybe to 2 rem units. Let's see how this looks. This is fine, but we also want to use a margin, 2 rem units. Okay, we'll also set border radius for this particular element, and let's set it to 0.5 rem units. Okay, now we have this nice little style. This large logo is really bothering me here, so I'll just jump back to my HTML. I actually want to add attributes to my image here, and for that I'll again open my developer tools. I would like to set it to something like 300 pixels. This seems to be okay, but maybe a little bit too much, so I'll try to adjust it. And if I hover over my value here, you're going to see that in DevTools I can just click and drag and see exactly how big I actually want this element to be. And I think 250 is going to be perfectly fine. And we will add width to our HTML because we want the browser to actually render this element exactly in a place immediately. And I can hover over this element here and see exactly that the height in that case will be 36 pixels. So I'll just do that. Width is going to be 250 and height is going to be 36. There you go. Let me close the DevTools now. So next thing that I want to do here is I actually want to address the layout for my elements because I want the logo to be next to navigation. I will actually move my background color to the bottom here. Let's set display to flex. And this will rearrange my elements exactly as I want them, one next to the other, logo next to the navigation bar. But of course, we want those links also to be one next to another in the inline dimension. So first, I'm going to remove those dots here from our unordered list. And unordered list has a class of header underscore underscore UL. And we will just remove list style. This doesn't seem to be working, so I'm thinking that I made a mistake in my HTML. So I'll jump back there. And sure enough, I have only one underscore here. It's a silly mistake, but it happens. And immediately when I changed this, you see that the dots disappeared. So this is looking as it should. So the next thing, I will also use the flexbox to rearrange those items horizontally. Display flex. And this is much better. It's still not nearly good enough, but we're getting there. Let's tweak the color for this to make it actually visible because this is completely inaccessible right now. And this is going to be header A selector, header underscore underscore A, and we will use the color we already used here. Okay, this is much better now. The problem here now, as you see, is those items are not aligned vertically, and I actually want the navigation to be on the right side here or at the end, and the logo to stay exactly where it is. So let's tweak this. First, I'll tweak spacing between my logo and my navigation bar, and this is going to be on our header element. So I will set justify content to space between, and justify content is going to be our inline dimension. Align is going to be our block dimension in this particular case. So let's set justify content, space between. And now we have space between those items exactly as we want, but we also want to align those items vertically. This is going to be align items property, and we will set it to center. Now this is nicely aligned, maybe not ideally, but decently enough. We still have a lot of problems with spacing in this particular element. We will address this immediately. First, let's add spacing between our navigation items because this is not how we want this to look. We will add a gap property to header UL element because we're using display flex here. Gap is going to be 1 rem, for example. And now this is a little bit better, but maybe not quite enough. So let's try 1.5. And this is much nicer actually. I'm also going to remove the underline here because this is going to be a navigation menu so people will understand that we're talking about links here. Take the decoration none. There you go. So now let's adjust a little bit the padding and spacing here. So whenever you're dealing with elements like this, you will want to have more spacing on the horizontal axis than on the vertical axis, or rather you will want to have more spacing on the inline axis than on block axis. So let's do that. Let's tweak our padding for this particular element. But first, let's just check exactly what is happening in our code here, because as you see in our header element, we have padding set to 2, but there's a big difference between this space and this. So let's check it. I'll open my developer tools and let's hover over our header. This looks exactly as it should. You see that our margin and padding look consistent. Let's see the styling on our H1 element. And sure enough, we have a margin here, top and bottom margin inherited by browser defaults, set to 0.67 ems. And this is where we get this spacing. So we'll actually want to reset this. And I will just immediately set it in my CSS. This is going to be header logo element. I'll add it here. And we'll add margin 0. Okay, this is much better now. So let's tweak the padding on our header element. And as I mentioned, almost always you will want to have more inline padding than block padding. So let's tweak this. I'll just close developer tools for now. And on our header element, I will set padding block to 2 rem units and padding inline to 3 rem units. Let's see how this looks. And this seems to be a lot better. Maybe I even want to reduce the size a little bit here, maybe 1.8 rem units, just so we can have a nice little visual balance between spacing here and spacing here. And this looks very, very nice already. But if you look very closely, or if you measure this, you're going to see that there is actually more space on the bottom than it is on top. So this is not ideally vertically centered. So we'll check it in Developer Tools. Let me open them again. And if I hover over my header element here, you're going to see that it really isn't centered as it should be. So if I go deeper, hover over my H1, this is going to look okay. But if I hover over my anchor link, you see that the image is off. There's more spacing below than above, but the actual problem here is on the image itself, because this image is by default by browser set to display inline, which means it's going to be affected by our font properties, and we actually don't want that. The easiest way to get around it is to just set it to display block. So let's try this. As you can see, it immediately moved. Now this looks much more balanced and exactly in the center as it should be. All right, I will just copy this code right here, and now we'll apply it to the header logo image. But if we jump back to our HTML, you're going to see that we don't actually have a class for this. So we'll add class here. Our class is going to be header image. This is the only image we have in our component, so naming it header image should not be a problem. Let's jump back to CSS and let's set header image to display block. And there we go. As you can see, the logo moved and it's now exactly centered as it should be. The next thing that I would like to do here is I would like to add hover effect to my link items, because this just looks really static. So maybe we want to have some kind of underline on hover, maybe we want to tweak the color a little bit or something like that. And here I'm thinking about reducing the opacity of the text color for navigation items by default, and then on hover, increasing it a little bit. And that way I will get a nice effect of items that appear to be highlighted when I hover over them. So let's try this out. I'll find header A element, and I will set opacity of this to 50%, for example. Let's see if it's good enough. I think that this is not really accessible, so we'll just increase opacity a little bit, maybe to 70%. Whenever you're working with text, bear in mind that it might not be readable if contrast between the text itself and the background is not big enough. So if you reduce opacity too much, the text will become unreadable, at least for a portion of people, and you never want to do that. You always want to make sure that your website is accessible and readable by everyone. And I would recommend that you use some kind of a tool to measure what the actual contrast between the text and background is. And for that particular case, I like using a tool called Contrast. I will exit the full screen now and open App Contrast. The link to that app will be in the description. And as you can see, it's a really simple app that actually allows you to select two colors. And this is going to be the background color for my case. And here we're going to have color of the text, this color. And it's going to tell me exactly if this contrast is good enough by giving it an accessibility rating A, AA, or AAA, or by failing, in which case I can be sure that the color contrast is not big enough and I need to increase it. In any case, we have verified that the contrast between our text color and the navigation background color is big enough, so we don't have to worry about that. But of course, it's always a good idea to check that and to make sure that your site is as accessible as possible. So let's set hover effect for this. We'll copy color property and the selector, header A. I will add hover state, and I will tweak color to maybe 90%. Let's see how this works. And now when I hover my items, they light up a little bit. Maybe we can go even to 95%. We don't want to go full white. We want to keep a little bit of the shade from behind the links. So let's see this now. And this seems to be okay. This transition is jumping, but there's a really easy way to animate that using the transition property. So add transition property to header A element, and I'm adding it to header A element because I want this color to transition both when I hover in an element and both when I hover out of an element. If I add transition to the hover state, it's only going to be animated when I hover out of the element. Let's add transition here. We will transition color property over the course of 0.2 seconds with the ease in out animation function. Let's see how this looks. And now it lights up gradually, which is really nice. And now we still have a couple of problems with this particular design. And can you guess what those are? I'll resize my window here to see what happens. If I increase the size, everything seems to be in order. But if I decrease the size here, our elements are going out of bounds, and this is absolutely not what we want. The way to fix that is to actually use responsive design, and once the element size is too small, we actually want to drop the navigation menu bar below our logo, And we can easily do that using the flexbox, of course. So what we want to do here is we want to find the point at which our design breaks and create a breakpoint exactly for that size. I'll resize that to the initial state. And now I'll reduce the size of my window until it no longer looks okay. So this is still okay, I think, but as soon as our navigation bar starts moving, it means it's too little space. And now the easiest way to measure the size for this would be to open Developer Tools and see exactly what the size of my body is. We're using CodePen here, so this is within an iframe, so I don't see exactly on my body element what the size is, but if I hover over parent elements until I find one that actually shows me the dimensions, and alright, this is the one. This needs to be 845 pixels. That is the point when the design breaks. So let's start from there. We'll set media query, add media, screen, and maximum width is going to be 850 pixels, exactly as we measured in our Developer Tools. And just to see if it works, I'm going to change the background of my body element. We'll set it to red. And this is not applied, but maybe my window is too big. Oh, okay, so here it is. This is exactly the moment media query is applied, which means we need to increase it a little bit. So let's maybe set it to 870 pixels. And now it should be applied even on a little bit bigger sizes. Now this seems to be okay. But what I actually want to do here is I want to rearrange my header and change the direction from row to column. So this is exactly what I'll do. Header, and we'll set flex direction to column. And now if we resize the browser, you should see that our layout changes exactly as we wanted. But of course, we still have a number of issues here. There's not enough space between the top of the element and our logo. There's too much space here, and this doesn't appear to be centered. There's more space here than it is here. So let's see what's happening. I'll inspect this element. If I hover my header element, you can see that the padding looks consistent between top and bottom. But if I hover over my navigation item, you're going to see that we have additional margin on the bottom of my navigation, which is exactly where this extra space is coming from. So what we want to do is we want to remove that particular margin. I will set header UL, margin 0. And this is not what we want. We actually still want to have space between logo and navigation, but not between navigation and the edge of an element. So we'll actually set margin block end to 0, while the margin block start will stay exactly as it was before. And now I'm thinking that we need to tweak top and bottom padding a little bit, add a little bit more space to it. So on our header element, I will set padding block to 3 rem units. We had 2 before, and now this looks much better, but I'm still not happy with the spacing between my logo and items. So I will also reduce margin block start to maybe 1 rem unit. Okay, we still have horizontally more space on the left side than on the right side. So let's see where this is coming from. If I hover over my navigation item, you see exactly that there is extra space on the left side of my navigation item. And this is actually coming from header UL element, or rather from default browser styles. Padding inline start is set to 40 pixels. We actually want to reset padding inline for our UL element entirely, not just for the responsive version. So let's do that. I'll find it here, header UL, and padding is going to be set to 0, just as well as margin. And now this appears to be centered, but let's check if the larger version of the site also works well. And it seems that we have removed the default padding, which was actually adding a little bit more space. So we'll actually want to tweak our header padding again and increase it just a little bit, maybe from 1.8 to 2.2. All right, this is better now. So now if we resize the window, you see that our design is still looking pretty much okay. But if we go too far, you're going to see that again, it's going to break. Luckily, we can wrap those items using flexbox. So we will add flex wrap to our header UL element because we want those items to be wrapped if there's not enough space for them. Flex wrap. Let's see how this looks. And it's better, but it's still not good enough. So let's just center those items, justify content, center, okay. And the spacing is still a little bit off. But now that I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, what if we add a little bit more flair to those items? Maybe we add some kind of a background to each one of our links. So Let's try doing that, and let's do this for non-responsive version. So I'm going to search my header A element selector, and I'll add background to it. And again, I'm going to select one of my existing backgrounds, and I'm going to use this color from here, this purple one, and I will tweak its lightness to make it even darker than this particular background of our header element. Let's try 20% lightness. And let's tweak opacity to maybe 70%, just as well as here. And now let's add a little bit of padding to those items so we actually see the background. And again, as we mentioned before, you always want to add a little bit more inline padding than block padding. So that's exactly what we are going to do. Padding inline is going to be 1 rem, and padding block is going to be 0.5 rem units. Let's see how this looks. This is much better now, but I would still like to increase it a little bit more. So let's say 1.5, 0.8 rem units for our block height. And I'm still not quite happy with this color here. I'll tweak it even more. Let's try 10% with 70% opacity. And as you can see, I'm just tweaking those values until I find something that looks and works okay. So don't be afraid to experiment with it, tweak those values, go to the extremes, and once you find something that you're happy with, something that works together, you can go with that. In any case, I think this is pretty much okay right now. I also want to add border radius right here, and I'm going to use exactly the same border radius as before, 0.5 rem units. Okay, this is nicer now. But spacing between those items is now a little bit too big, so I will reduce that. This is going to be flex gap that we set on our header UL element. So I will tweak it to 1 rem. And this is a lot better right now. I will also increase the size of my logo a little bit because I think the balance is a little bit off. Those navigation items are actually much more prominent, and we don't actually want this, at least not in this particular case. So I'll just open Developer Tools, and I'll try to increase the size right here from width 250 to 300 pixels, and we'll set height to auto because we actually want to increase that. And now it looks much more in balance. So this is the value that I'll use, and I'll just hover over my element in Developer Tools to see exactly the dimensions, and it's going to be 43 pixels height. So that's exactly what I'll set in HTML. Let's tweak this. From 250, we will set this to 300, and this is going to be, like we said, 43 pixels. And as you have seen in Developer Tools, this was not an integer, but it was 43.2. So we will actually set on our image element height auto to ensure that width and height are in the perfect aspect ratio. On our header image, I'll set height to auto. All right, and now we will still need to adjust some things. And number one thing, we want to add gap between our logo and our navigation item. And this is going to be on our header element. We will also use a gap property, just as we did on our header UL element. Gap is going to be 2 rem units. And as you can see, now there is spacing between logo and navigation items, but that's still not enough for this particular case. So let's try 3 rem units. Okay, this is better, but as you can see, our responsive mode is not okay. So we actually want to switch to the column layout of Flexbox much sooner, somewhere around this size. And if you can see here on CodePen, at the bottom, you see exactly the size. I actually didn't notice this until just right now. Fantastic work, CodePen theme. And I can see that I actually want 190 pixels for my breakpoint. Let's tweak this. And now if we try to resize it, you can see that it works okay. Let's tweak the spacing between our logo and our navigation bar. And the problem here is exactly the property we added just recently. We added gap to our header element, which means horizontal and vertical gap, but we actually only want to have horizontal gap, not the vertical gap, or rather we want horizontal and vertical to be different. So we will tweak this on our header element. We will set column gap to 3 rem units, just as it was before, and the row gap to 1 rem unit. So everything is working almost okay, except when our items start wrapping. And as there's no way to actually detect when the Flexbox items start wrapping, we'll actually have to work around that issue. And the easiest way for that would be to use gap property, again on our UL element. Let's set it to 1 rem unit. And now this doesn't appear to be working, so I'll inspect this element right here. And you're gonna find that gap actually is applied but our link elements are actually too big. And the reason for that is we're actually setting the padding, but we didn't change the display of links to block. So we'll set display to block here and developer tools to see if it fixes our issue. And sure enough, it does. And now if I resize my screen, you're going to see that everything is working exactly as it should. And our responsive version is pretty much okay, except when we go really, really narrow when our logo falls out. So we will fix that as well. But first, let's add display block to header A selector. Display block. And for our image element, we'll set maximum width to 100%. Let's see how this looks. It's not really ideal, but nothing breaks. And that is actually the most important thing. So right here, we have created from scratch this beautiful little navigation bar menu item, and it's actually responsive. We've used flexbox for layout. All the colors in this design are working beautifully together. We've used only the colors that are already present in our background image that we selected at the start of this particular video. And I hope that this really shows you the power of CSS. One thing that I would still like to do with this is I would like to add a little bit more flair to the hover effect here. If you want to learn for this particular menu how to create direction aware hover effect, check out my next video on how to do exactly that. Until then, my name is Navbar. Thank you so much for your attention, and I will see and hear you in the next navigation menu item, or rather in the next video.